And let me introduce our next guests. The first is Fernando Gordillo, responsible for HP, for packaging and flexible solutions in packaging at HP. Fernando, good morning. He speaks Italian very fluently. We won't even notice that he is Spanish, but he is. We also have Giacomo Canali from Barilla, Packaging Research and Sustainability Manager. Welcome.
Good morning.
And we also have Alberto Palaveri from the Sacchital Group. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone.
We have talked to many different actors in this industry today, and we are starting to understand that Industry 4.0 and sustainability actually are interrelated, and one depends on the other and vice versa. We can't think of sustainability which is compatible with today's globalized market if we do not implement this concept of Industry 4.0. So I'm asking for your contribution on this for your point of view, and we'll see in how far things match when we'll see whether we can have a general, complete picture of the situation. Let me start from Fernando Gordillo from HP.
Well, first of all, good morning, everyone, and thanks very much for having me. Thanks for giving me the opportunity of joining in today and discussing this important topic, namely sustainability and Industry 4.0. As you stated, these concepts go hand in hand, like a fork and knife. It takes two to tango. I wanted to show you 3 slides. Speaking of sustainability, for those of you who are not familiar with HP, HP manufactures printers and also industrial printers, all printers for corrugated cardboard, for labels, and also for trade printing solutions. So that's why we're here today. Looking at this slide, we can tackle the topic of sustainability by stating that we have been discussing this subject for years. We've talked about recyclable packaging solutions, the use of different raw materials, new designs, etc. So all of that is fine. We have been working on this. We will work on this moving forward, and we want to come up with the best suited solution regarding the possibility of recycling our products and promoting the concept of circular economy. What's the best solution then? It's hard to answer this question because it really depends on the country, it depends on national solutions, and it depends on the national system. It's a challenging topic. Rather than getting into our past track record, I would like to provide a context for sustainability. Next slide, please. Here we are. So, looking at the packaging industry and looking at future labels and flexible packaging products, looking at the market scenario, I think that this slide is very useful in interpreting the current COVID scenario. Some years ago, we entrusted IDC with the task of conducting a study with approximately 300 brands from small to large-sized companies. And they asked them a set of questions because they needed to know when their packaging needs to be changed, modified, or phased out, and what the main problems were related to that. And this is an important question. What percentage of your total printed packaging inventory ends up being destroyed, so discarded each year? And this is important from the standpoint of market demand and stock-taking opportunities. 50% of the respondents of the brands dispose between 1 and 24% of the packaging, 1/4 of the packaging material. This is destroyed in some way or another. Interestingly enough, on the right-hand side of the slide, you see actually next to this column, the green and the purple one, we have between 25 and 50% and 50% and 75%. And they account for plus 25% of printed packaging that needs to be destroyed as a result of stock taking. So this has a fundamental impact on cost containment strategies and also for sustainability-related matters. We can reduce the quantity of materials before the product is manufactured rather than a posteriori. Brands and businesses in general need to submit their order in advance for production purposes. Then COVID struck and everything changed. As a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, the economy is struggling. All these costs, all these details and processes that hadn't been implemented in the past now have become even more telling, even more important. So I'm thinking about converters, for example. So they have the opportunity of doing something different and doing it better. And many of them came up with more versatile solutions, more agile, more precise in terms of printing, in terms of production, in terms of packaging delivery, especially with regard to the healthcare and pharmaceutical sector, as well as the food industry. The concept of agility is essential, and digital printing clients have seen a tremendous increase in terms of productivity on average, and it depends on the market, labeled cardboard and corrugated cardboard. It fares around plus 30%, which is actually a striking increase. And it's something that we have to keep at the back of our minds every time we address the topic of sustainability. And when I say sustainability, I'm also thinking about the environment and business and market sustainability. And there is another graph that I don't have the time to go over with you. So we asked some of these companies, how do you think you need to change your packaging solution in order to adjust to food security guidelines, for example? Because this might imply the fact that already existing packaging needs to be disposed of and destroyed, and this can have visible effects. And again, I think that this is something that we need to keep an eye on. Next slide, please. To wrap it up, whenever we think about sustainability, we need to focus on the environment. And we heard that plastic was a devil, that nature is really giving us the 1-2 somehow. And so plastics have helped us getting access to certain products online or in emergencies. Some years ago, we conducted a study about the life cycle of coffee packaging, which is quite relevant to Italy, I believe. And this is just for the sake of an example. So we looked at the life cycle of the typical coffee packaging from the beginning to the end, so to the recycling process. We looked at printing, manufacturing, products, energy consumption, etc. We went over 13 different factors that have a direct impact on the environment, and we compare it to traditional printing, so flexible packaging, so considering gravure and other types of prints, for example, flexo. And we noticed that paper was obviously environmentally friendly,
right?
Both in terms of energy consumption, in terms of thinning of the ozone layer, in terms of CO2 emissions, and so on down the line. We noticed that the digital printing method was friendlier. So, and this is an important argument that we can table whenever we discuss sustainability. So digital is important. This was for the fork. Now I'm going to talk about the knife, back to my previous metaphor. So it's very important for the industry as a whole, especially if we consider plastic and metal coating. We manufacture different pieces of machinery, and we have already addressed that within the framework of Industry 4.0. We use machine learning solutions with all of our digital printing machines, and we believe that this is an important factor. So, and we're already using it. So, this is the message that I wanted to share with you.
Thank you very much, Fernando Gordillo from HP, who's told us how HP is now facing these topics of Industry 4.0 and the environment. Now let me go to talk to Alberto Palaveri from Sacchital Group. What's your experience, Alberto?
Good morning, everyone. We have been present in the market since 1945, and we were called Sacchificio Italiano and then renamed Sacchital. We were manufacturing paper bags back in the old days, before we had the gravure technology. So as Mr. Medugno explained a while ago, well, the topic of sustainability is a fundamental actor in our philosophy, and it's our trump card, if you will. In the past 4 to 5 years, our company decided to leverage on innovation, and we tried to provide answers to new demands for newer product, especially brand owners. For example, Barilla, which is one of our partners. Despite the pandemic, we have 162 projects that cater to the needs of these 3 sustainability lines. The most important one is paper flex. That is to say, paper is flexible, is a multi-material type of substance, and a considerable quota of this material is fed into the circular economy framework. There is another important project that has just been launched about composting and compostables, actually. So we have paper and high barrier materials because they increase the product shelf life. And the third line, which is less important to us, not for a matter of quantity, but because there are a lot of competitors, is the monoflex, so the monomaterial solution. How did we get to where we are at today? And I would like to emphasize 2 key words mentioned by Mr. Baglieri. The topic of circular economy makes us sort of spinning round, and we have to, as we did with children, sit in circles and sing.
Yeah, we really need to be going in circles, right? Otherwise it's not circular.
But still, I believe that these keywords must be included in every project of circular economy, because if I don't speak with my peers and I don't design in such a way that those who will use the product can dispose of it in the best possible way in terms of environmental and economic feasibility, clearly it's not a circular economy system. It's parceled out. The second buzzword is designing. So we are hosted by machine manufacturers today, and the designing part is essential because there is a lot of design in what we do. It's essential that machine manufacturers ask us what we need and what brand always need. We need, in fact, different types of printing systems, digital, gravure, and whatever. So there must be one material, but it's difficult that one single material caters to different needs cascading from the industry. So there could be a small quantity of bioplastic. When I say small quantity, I mean that we're talking about microns, so lower quantities than we were used to years ago. So those who use these materials prior to product release must be able to juggle that. So if you use polythene of, say, 10 microns, is invisible. In the past, we were using 60 microns. So this means that there must be safety checks, like touch control systems, because we roll out massive quantities of products so that end consumers receive a lot of product and very little packaging. Next slide. And I know that we are running a bit late.
Yeah, we're approaching the end of the morning session. We will reconvene at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but more about that later.
Next slide. So this was just a recap of our projects. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Here we go. And we have some names here. And so I'd like to address the topic of post-COVID scenarios. So these are leading companies in their manufacturing fields, and they are located at a few kilometers away from one another. So we're actually answering to one of the post-COVID needs, as Palaveri said, an approach that encompasses the entire supply chain. And this was expedited by technology and the choice of materials. And Misura is one of these brands, for example, that we use the products cascading from this effort. And this is a regionalization approach. And I would like to send out a positive message, because in Italy, we do have a lot of specificities and a lot of competencies and innovative skills that can help us use different sets of technology in order to cater to the needs of the entire supply chain. So, and it's high time for us to be innovative. And some of the products we rolled out, as Baglioni said, is just one of the global examples that are currently available. So upstream the packaging industry, we do have excellent businesses. They speak the same language, and they're also responding to the long supply chain scheme that was imposed on us by COVID-19. We need to react promptly together in a consistent fashion.
And what we see here represented here is sort of the 4.0 typical relationship in a physical world. If 4.0 was really implemented, then we wouldn't even need to be physically connected or next to each other, but that's manageable today already.
That's right. I mean, the problem wasn't not to have the skill sets, but to get organized with them. We are Italians are good at doing that sometimes, but it took us longer than Germany. So we have the competencies, we have the skills, but we are lagging behind in terms of organizational skills. So thanks very much for those of you who have put this event together, because this obviously nurtures communication.
Thank you, Alberto Palaveri from Sacchital Group. And let us now move to Giacomo Canali, who is the Manager for Sustainability and Research in Packaging at Barilla. I'm sorry, I might have mispronounced your job description. Canali, can we see Giacomo Canali? Yes, here he is. Can you tell us something about your angle?
Yes. I would like to thank Mr. Palaveri and Mr. Medugno because they gave me some fruitful food for thinking. I would like to go back to the definition provided by Professor Tapper because he mentioned the importance of not compromising the possibility for future generations to meet their needs. And this is what packaging needs to do. So it doesn't need to compromise the well-being of future generations. So packaging fulfills two purposes. Number one, it protects food products, products that have a specific shelf life. So that's the number one purpose. The second aspect that we shall remind ourselves of is the safety of the product that reaches end consumers, both in terms of food security and safety. So speaking of materials, some years ago we designed some guiding principles that have been shaping all of our design activities. I would rather say eco-design activities, as Mr. Medugno pointed out earlier. These principles are made public and they encompass all of our activities. Number one, reduction of packaging material quantities. This is expedited by technology and also constant interaction between end users and technology vendors or technology providers, which translate into practical solution all of these news. And this is perhaps a tiny little item that was missing from Mr. Palaveri's presentation. So the constant back and forth between end users and the industry in order to foster new ideas. Number two, utilizing recyclable packaging. Well, this is at the core of our activities, and I'm going to go back to that in a second. We've been talking about paper-based packaging time and again this morning, and so packaging based on paper fibers. For very many years, we've been using all the products coming from PFC branded forestries, for example, and the use of scientific tools such as the life cycle assessment or LCA in order to benchmark different technological solutions. This enables us to select the solution that has the littlest environmental impact. And then number five, the possibility of using renewable sources like food waste or agricultural waste that don't compete with the food chain. And this is a very important principle. We are a food company, so we can't ethically accept that corn, for example, is used to come up with a plastic coating material rather than a food product. Next slide. So here we have a recent slide, and it shows the roadmap to a more sustainable future. It maps out a pathway that will be actionable in the mid to long term in order to be impact-free, or the so-called zero-impact packaging, back to what Professor Tapper said this morning. So the first goal we'll achieve by the end of 2020 is to be fully recyclable. So all of our materials will be technically fully recyclable. So monomaterial, we talked about plastic coatings, for example, or glassware or aluminum ones, or that are compliant with at least a B-class evaluation as per AT-CELCA method, so that the product has specific characteristics that would make it possible to be recycled in a universal fashion. And this is an Italian branded methodology for the time being. Hopefully this method will be disseminated on a global scale. However, we believe that there is such technology and it must become the benchmark for future developments. Moving forward, and let's look at the next step on our roadmap, we would like to replace plastic that is not indispensable for product manufacturing or for production with paper from renewable sources, and to have a higher renewable potential, higher than plastic coatings, for example. So this is an important goal for certain types of products because there are products that must use plastics due to food security issues, and plastics are very efficient because with a small quantity of plastic we can deliver high barrier protection. Let's look at the last long-term goal. When I wrote this slide, I thought it was really far away in time, far ahead of us, but it's actually getting closer and closer in time. That is to say, 100% use of renewable and or recycled sources. And by recycled sources, I mean that they are suited for food contact. And chemical recycling technology is helping us in this regard, and it is a booming type of technology. It's traveling at a much faster pace than expected, and we're going to get to these solutions in the next few years. And let me allow to mention one last thing. We want to promote recycling solutions, and we're already doing that in many different ways. We are participating to CFlex events. They deal with flexible film mainstreaming activities, and in partnership with CONAI, and we're investing on consumers' education. And we are adding icons for proper disposal on every pack of our products, because we believe that this is the ABC, if you will. We need to teach consumers how to dispose of these materials. So, and this comes upstream, and that's an important role as brand owner.
I thought you were done, but please go on.
Let me just wrap it up, and then it's going to be over to you. The next objective would eliminate my role as a packaging officer, because we are striving towards the elimination of packaging in a safe fashion for consumers. We'll see what's going to happen.
So this is the long-term objective, and this is a slide still to be written. It is clear that processes have been accelerating, and we can be optimistic about this.